Hey guys, welcome to episode 17 of Trek Live. In this episode, we're going to talk about a little more controversial topic, Nemesis versus Star Trek 5. With me to do that is Bill. How you doing this morning, Bill?
Good. It's early, a little tired, but ready to talk some Trek. Ready to talk about some, like you said, of the more controversial. Talk about the more controversial movies. Pretty frequently cited, uh, kind of bottom of the barrel Star Trek movies.
Hmm.
But looking forward to getting into them and finding out, finding out from you if you think that their reputation is well founded. Are they as bad as people say? That's kind of the gist of what I want to find out.
Yeah.
So, hi Rob, how you doing? Thanks for joining us this morning. Um, so I guess my first question to you, Dan, before you dive into the topic proper,
Hmm.
is: have you watched anything recently? I know you've been busy.
I
You-
still have not. I think I'm going to break that this weekend, but I think
cool.
it's been a long time. I have been
Yeah, it's been a long road.
yeah, so I think this is just a break. I'm still in season 2 of Enterprise, so just taking a little break.
Hmm.
I hope to get back into it soon, but have you watched anything lately?
Yeah, I've been watching DS9 season 7, Voyager season 5, kind of going back and forth. I watched Insurrection 2 days ago. I hit that in my rewatch, so that's kind of also in the back of my mind as we're talking about these two movies. I'm not going to delve into that one, but it's it's raw. I just watched it. Um, Season 5 of Voyager is very good. I think pretty
Hmm.
consistently really strong, especially this early portion of it, first
One of
half
my
of it.
favorite seasons,
Yeah, it's
season
kind of
5.
running on all cylinders.
Yeah.
It's firing on all cylinders. I mean, and it's a lot of big concepts, big science fiction ideas
Hmm.
driving a lot of these episodes. Um, 30 Days, the big water planet is like this cool retro
Yeah.
100,000 Leagues Under the Sea kind of idea. Um, Counterpoint, I just watched. That's awesome. I love Counterpoint. I think Kate Mulgrew is top notch, at her very best in that. I watched Timeless last weekend. I think that's some of the best track ever.
Yeah.
And then for DS9, I think the Siege of AR-558 is another one. It's just absolutely top of the line.
Yeah.
Some of the best Star Trek ever, as far as I'm concerned. It's different, it's dark, uh, explores some territory that we usually don't get to see. And yeah, both of these shows are kind of really hitting it right now. But I'm getting towards the end. I'm halfway through these two seasons, and then I just have 2 seasons of Voyager left. And because I start with Enterprise when I do this kind of rewatch,
Hmm.
and then just the Kelvin timeline movies and Nemesis at the very end. So I'm getting towards the end for this round. I'm not sure what I'll do after this,
Yeah, I was just gonna
but
ask, do you have any plans? Uh,
not nothing planned. I mean, it's never usually that long before I wind up just kind of starting up again, just casually. Exactly. Rob just said it just in time for Discovery. I have it kind of. I have a little bit of a chart out. If I watch this much for the next few weeks, I'll finish right as Discovery's getting ready to start, that weekend. So I'm kind of trying to do that. I'm trying to keep that pace so I
okay.
can finish it and then go right into Discovery.
Okay.
And I think that'd be kind of neat to watch the entire thing leading up to the new show. Uh, but we'll see. I don't know. I'm probably going to be pretty. Um, Discovery will probably be pretty all encompassing for
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
for those 8 weeks. I probably won't be able to watch much else like Trek. I'll
Any
be thinking
track?
about Discovery all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, for those 8 weeks or whatever in the part of the fall season. So said we'll see. Um, so I guess to kick off our topic, we're going to kind of talk about each of these two movies individually. Talk about what we liked and what we didn't. Our basic positive, negative feelings on each movie, and then we're going to compare them and try to figure out which one we personally prefer, and talk about again, do these movies deserve to be kind of at the bottom of most lists, like they frequently are. Occasionally, you see some others sneak down there. I've seen lists with,
Into
the motion
Darkness.
picture is down there, Into
Yeah.
Darkness is down there
Hmm.
sometimes. Insurrection can get down there sometimes, but
Yeah.
I think if you pull together like the vast majority of fans' lists of like ranking of the movies, and I did this a little while ago on Twitter. I put mine out and I asked for people to put theirs out, and Five and Nemesis are definitely on average like in that bottom three. It's unusual to see them get much higher than that. There are times there are people who love both of these movies, but they're very frequently towards the bottom of the list. So um, thought it'd be fun to explore both of them and try to pinpoint maybe why that is. So I guess to kick us off, Dan, we're going to talk about the Final Frontier first,
Okay.
Star Trek Five. Um, what are your general thoughts? Like when we talk about Star Trek Five, like what comes to mind for you?
Um, I don't know. I think, especially it being a little bit older of a movie, I think it has a little bit more charm than the newer movies.
Hmm.
Um, uh, but at the same time, like there's things that I can find in it that I like. On the other hand, though, there is some things in it that just don't work for me. So I think it's to me when I think about it, it's got charm, but it's like, there's definitely some weak points in it. What about for
Sure.
you?
I kind of think the same thing. I think it has a kind of a uniquely TOS feel to it, like campy, silly. Uh, TOS kind of delved into that territory, and because of its age, it has that vibe sometimes. And I think the Final Frontier has some similar stuff going on. And like you said, I think it has a kind of charm to it that I don't think is necessarily there in the next movie we're going to talk about. Um, I think I appreciate that it tries to be like a standalone thing, which it was kind of different from the movies that came before it. Two, three, four kind of all form a trilogy, like an informal, they're linked together story wise. And this is kind of the first one to kind of step outside of that and try to do its own thing. And I think that was a challenge, I'm sure, to like do something that could stand on its own and be its own thing.
Hmm.
And they went light. I think I was thinking about it last night. I saw Six not too long ago in the movie theater. I've talked about this. I saw 2, 4, and 6 in the movie theater on Father's Day. So I was thinking about Six, which comes right after this, and how different those two movies are. Six is such like a heavy, um, weighty, dramatic movie, and this is so much more like light. Um, like I said, kind of campy almost
Hmm.
um, type of movie.
Yeah.
Um, So I think that's what comes to mind, like just the weird charm that it tries to have that it sometimes succeeds with, sometimes doesn't. Um, and I guess the number one thing that I think of is that it's a movie about the three of them. It's a complete exploration of the triad. How effective that exploration is up for debate. Like how interesting it is up for debate. It doesn't delve into like new territory, but it's definitely a showcase for those three characters being together and. It's a love letter to their bromance, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I guess it has its moments. I think. Like when I guess my first question to you is like, what about it works for you? Like, what are the positive things? Are there scenes? Are there things about the production that stand out as, hey, that kind of worked? They did a decent job with that.
First of all, I think this movie, like um, my first positive is probably the score.
Yeah,
We were watching
agreed.
it last night, and yeah, we are definitely both in agreement that this definitely has a great score, and it's one of the bright moments in this film.
Yes.
Also, as cheesy as it sounds, I love the campfire scene. I know it gets really cheesy when they start to sing, but there's definitely some good moments with the triad, and um, they're fun and silly. So, um,
Yeah, actually,
yeah, those are
go
kind of
ahead.
my two big positives.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think some of the banter, some of the humor in the campfire scene does work for me. I think because the actors are so comfortable together, they're so comfortable in the role, they're comfortable with each other, with chemistry. Uh, simple one-liners, the back and forth, I think does
Yeah,
kind of pop. I think it works. Um, it's endearing. Um, so I appreciate that. I think that's probably the highlight of the movie for me. I think it works best for people who are really invested in the characters, as opposed to like a standalone thing that a non-fan might stumble into. If you're not totally invested in these characters and you don't just like spending time with them, like a true fan would, it's almost about when you're a fan of Trek or anything really, when you go back to watch it again, it's more about like spending time with your friends than like watching it to absorb the story. Sometimes it's more of just like comfort food kind of stuff. And if you have that, if that's why you're watching it, I think this movie can work for you in that way because of scenes like the campfire scene. You're
hmm
just kind of spending time with your friends. Um, and I totally agree on the score. I think Jerry Goldsmith's score is spectacular. I think it totally kind of elevates the movie. It gives it a little bit of extra oomph that it desperately needs. Uh, there are stretches of it that I'm thinking about when they're taking the shuttle down to the planet at the end. The score in that scene is long and like it's a big stretch of um, the movie that's just kind of music with imagery, and I think that kind of works. The score is great. Um, Trying to think what else.
yeah,
I like some of the look of it. I like the props in a lot of ways. Like I love the new phasers that they have in it. I like the um, I like some of the sets. We talked yesterday about the shuttle bay. Uh, I think that's like actually one of the cooler sets that's been in the movies. It's big. It's got some scale.
hmm
Like visually, it kind of makes sense that it's the shuttle bay. You can kind of tell that you're inside the shuttle bay.
hmm
Um, like the way the door is shaped, and just like I said, the scale of it. It's a big set. It's huge, and I kind of like that with the real practical shuttle sitting in it. Um, I don't know. I think there's some cool stuff in it
hmm
like that. Um, John Jones, who's new, I believe. I don't think we've seen him here
yeah.
before.
Welcome,
So
John.
welcome, John. Mentioned that he doesn't like the bridge set in Star Trek Five, and I kind of actually disagree. I think I like that set. I like a lot of the sets in the movie. I like the observation lounge kind of set that they have
Is
the big scene in.
is that the boat?
Yeah,
Wheel scene. Okay, I was like, why? What is this room? Like, what? I don't know. It's
yeah. I
just
don't
where
know
you
what
just
it
go
is.
to chill or something, or
That's kind of how I took it, like almost like a lounge.
yeah.
Uh, I don't know what the purpose of it is. It's there, I guess, to have this big scene that's going to happen later in the movie,
hmm
like a big space where they can all be together and have some room to move around. I guess it's the practical reason for the set to exist, but I don't know what the the in-universe purpose of this room is,
Yeah.
other than to chill in,
Yeah.
um, just the way it looks. But I think it's a cool looking set. I think it works for the scene that it's kind of like really there for. Um, I like I don't know. The new sets are cool. I'm not as huge on the like. It's obvious why they had to do it, but the TNG repurposing, the obvious repurpose of the shuttle bay and the transporter room, or not the shuttle bay, the sick bay and the transporter room,
Yeah.
the corridors, some of that's kind of ho hum for me. Six does the same thing, and it's understandable, that they had to use what they had. Um, but the new stuff that they built for the movie, I think, is actually kind of cool.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. And then this just like talking about the effects a little bit. I
Hmm.
really like that they use practical effects. Like I love the detail of the ships, especially on the Klingons. Just I guess just when anything moves though, as far as like the visual effects, just definitely doesn't work for me. But I do love the detail of the ships and that they kind of use practical effects. So
Yeah, yeah, we kind of talked about that too last night. That yeah, the models look great.
hmm
You can really see the models
hmm
when they're kind of sitting still.
yeah,
But you can kind of tell that the visual effects team, I think, maybe bit off more than they could chew. I know it wasn't, Industrial Light and Magic (ILM) did the visual effects for a lot of these movies,
hmm
and this was one that they for whatever reason, they weren't able to get them. So it was like a smaller company coming in to do the movie, and they, I don't think, quite knew how to deal with the models
Yeah.
for certain for like you said, scenes where there's supposed to be motion. In a lot of ways, I think the visual effects. This movie came out at the same time that season 2 of TNG was airing, like at the back end of that season. It came out that summer,
Hmm.
and I think a lot of the visual effects in season 2 of TNG are probably stronger than some of the visual effects in this movie,
Yeah.
which is kind of amazing. But I do agree. I like a lot of the practical effects. I mentioned last night when we were watching it that the like when they're in the shuttlecraft and you can kind of see the Enterprise through the view screen. You can
Yeah.
tell that it's a practical effect. I really like the scene that I'm going to ask you about in a minute here, but kind of talk about, but the big kind of dramatic scene of the movie when they're in this observation lounge area with the boat thing. You can see the Great Barrier kind of slowly approaching and out the window,
Yeah.
and that's also like a practical effect. I think some of that stuff's kind of cool.
Hmm.
Um, but again, I totally agree that a lot of the motion stuff, the shuttlecraft flying into the shuttle bay it's kind of flat and doesn't work. Um, the I don't know when they're at warp, it kind of just it doesn't pop the way that the earlier movies do.
Yeah.
2, 3, 4, the
Hmm.
movies that Industrial Light and Magic did, and 6 just a year later, it looks like a huge step forward.
Hmm.
And I really think that that's the visual effects team that maybe wasn't up to the task, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah. So like I was kind of alluding to there, I think the scene that I seen cited most frequently as maybe a saving grace for this movie is the big scene with Sybok and the triad in that room, where he kind of exposes Spock and McCoy's pain.
Hmm.
How does that scene work for you? Does it work? Do you think it's a kind of a saving grace of the movie? Do you not like it? Out of curiosity, we didn't talk about it while the movie was playing, so I
Yeah.
want to save it for this.
I thought it was an okay scene.
Mm-hmm.
I s During it, it was a little bit slow for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I like it because you got kind of an insight into, McCoy and Spock's character a little bit. Um, and I think it just that scene kind of bolsters um, the main, reason why I still like it. It's because, like you said, it's kind of like a love note, like you said, to the triad. So I think it kind of bolsters that theme a little bit. Um, but I don't know. What do you think of it?
John kind of just said it for me. The stuff with McCoy really works for me. I think DeVarce Kelly kills it. I think he's awesome
Yeah.
in a way that he doesn't always get to play. DeVarce Kelly's amazing as McCoy, but he doesn't necessarily always get to stretch and play different notes. He's curmudgeon-y. He's cranky a lot of the time, and there's always heart behind that. Like he does a great job with that
Yeah.
kind of persona and embodying that with other stuff that you can see if you want to see it. But this is an opportunity for him to really, sink his teeth into a dramatic scene.
Hmm.
And that kind of reveals something about his backstory, and we don't know a lot about a lot of these characters' backstories in TOS because it's just the nature of television when that show
Hmm.
was on, wasn't exploring those kinds of things. So I really appreciate that this tells us something about McCoy and maybe tells us a little something about why McCoy is the way he is. Um, and so that really works for me. I think that's a great scene. I think the Spock stuff, I don't know. It's okay. I guess I buy it,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have the same impact on me that the McCoy scene does. The
Hmm.
one thing I'll say about it, though, the one thing that I think maybe doesn't work entirely, and the reason it's not truly great, and it's just kind of, I think it's good, I think it works, but I think the reason it's not a total success is because the tone of the movie up to that point isn't really consistent with that scene, and the tone of the movie after it isn't either. Like it's the movie's, like I said, very kind of light, kind of campy, kind of silly.
Hmm.
Doesn't take itself very seriously, and then this scene kind of pops out of nowhere and is like this huge dramatic punch
Hmm.
um, that I don't know is completely earned because of just the tone of the movie. I think it kind of feels like it's from a different thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like a natural fit in this movie. Um, at least that's what I was thinking last night. It always kind of strikes me that that's such an attempt to be full of gravitas and power, and kind of stuck in the middle of a movie that doesn't seem to be interested in kind of that vibe.
Hmm.
Uh, do you like Kirk's part of that scene? His big speech, I guess, about needing his pain, not want like does that work for you? Do you think that's a good Kirk
It's
scene?
so Shatner though. It's
It
so
is.
Shatner when he just
Yeah,
how he delivers it, and it just I like it. I like his speech because it is so Shatner. It's not
yeah,
like, it's not like this profound speech that you'll remember for the rest of your life. It's just so Shatner that you just can't help but smile and like it.
yeah, yeah. I agree. It is. It's quintessentially like Shatner as Kirk.
Yeah,
Uh, it's him just totally doing his thing, just
yeah,
directing it so he can do whatever he wants. He can play it however he wants to, and he
yeah,
does. Like he does his
yeah,
full shat.
yeah,
Um, it kind of works for me. I kind of like the message of it. I think there's some truth in that.
yeah,
Not getting caught up in exploring your own choices and
yeah.
uh, you know wondering what would happen if you turned left and you should have turned right. That whole thing. I kind of appreciate that.
Hmm.
The older I get, I kind of see merit in that message, I
Hmm.
guess. Um, I think we do kind of need our pain. I think
Yeah.
it makes us who we are. I think he's right in a lot of ways. Um, so you know, I think that kind of stuff, the scene, that message, I think kind of buoys this movie from totally sinking. For me personally, I know
Hmm.
it. I know people who think this movie is a total disaster. Uh, and think it's like some of the worst stuff that Trek ever did. And I
Hmm.
kind of disagree. I don't think it is. I think it's more towards the average to below average kind of middle of the pack, honestly, because I think it does have this unique charm to it, and I think the actors are so confident and comfortable that the big three can instill some emotion into some of the silliness that's going on, and it keeps it fun. I mean, I think we both had a good time watching this movie last night. I don't think it's a slog necessarily. Like
Hmm.
it's not a struggle to get through it. I don't. I know what I'm getting into when I get to it when I watch it, but I don't typically go, oh man, I can't watch this. It's not like that kind of bad
Hmm.
movie reaction. That's just me personally. I don't
Hmm.
I don't feel that with this movie. Um, I go into it with eyes wide open, and I don't know how you feel about this, but something that I always kind of go back to, and I'm sure we're going to talk about towards the end of this, is I think this movie is kind of saved by the fact that this is not the end. We get another movie after this, and
Yeah.
the next movie we're going to talk about does not have that benefit.
No.
And I think that's a big difference for me with these two movies that I'm sure we're going to talk about in a bit. Um, does anything else come to mind for you for five for the Final Frontier
For
before we move on?
likes or dislikes?
Either one, just like
Okay.
anything.
Um, Dislikes. Not a huge fan of the plot.
Yeah.
That just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I'm not trying to bash it or anything.
Hmm.
I think there's a lot of moments that are very cheesy and corny, but that's just kind of comes with the territory.
Yeah.
One thing I'd like to just mention before we kind of move on is how informal and very loose and the big three is. Like I feel
Yeah.
like it's just different from very very formal.
Hmm.
Um, we see in like TNG and the rest of the shows, but now it's like this just feels, I don't know, a little bit loosey goosey for me, and
It does.
I like that kind of formal structure that kind of feels like Starfleet is still
Hmm.
um, kind of professional. And but I mean, I don't know. At the same time, it's like Kirk and Spock and McCoy aren't professional, but are they? I don't know. It's just that's
Yeah.
just one thing that didn't work for me in this film.
Yeah, they are. They're very. Yeah, like you said, that's a really good point that I didn't plan to talk about, but I'm glad you brought it up.
Hmm.
Um, really good point. there is like this really relaxed feeling to it, and
Yeah.
I don't know if it's I don't know because it's not. It was certainly a conscious choice, I guess, that they made that they were going to do this. That's the way they were going to play this. That they were because they don't necessarily like Kirk doesn't come across like he has in the past, where he is the captain. He's in charge.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of all feel like they're on the same footing
Yeah.
in their scenes together. They're just three
Yeah.
guys. They're three friends, and I think that's kind of what they were. That's probably what they were trying to get at because this
Mm-hmm.
movie, I think, is an exploration of their bond. I think that's what it's trying to do. I think it's trying to like they talk about at the end that that none of them have families, but they have each other. That is their family.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm sure that's why they were doing that because that's the theme they were exploring. But I agree with you. I do prefer them. There are in this organization. They're in an org chart as you know.
Yeah.
I like it when Kirk embodies the captain and isn't just one of three.
Yeah.
And I think this movie does do that for
Mm-hmm.
better or worse. I don't know. I think some of the lines that come from that feeling of casual setting that they're kind of establishing are kind of funny.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of when they're in the turbo lift, when they first get back to the Enterprise, and Kirk just kind of like says, "Oh, I could use a shower," and Spock's like, "Yeah," like,
Yeah.
like I, that's silly, and it makes me laugh. And I think they're able to do that by having this casual atmosphere.
Yeah.
But it's definitely unusual. It's a different
Mm-hmm.
choice. Um, yeah. As far as the plot goes, like you were talking about, something that has always bothered me about this movie is this. I just never buy that. First off, I'm never big on. Oh, you're the only ship in the quadrant. You're the only ship in the sector, so you have to go
Yeah.
whether you're ready or
What?
not. It makes no sense. It's totally silly, and I'm glad that they kind of abandoned that idea. They stopped doing that at a certain point. But
Yeah.
that that that's that just doesn't work. That's silly and ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just having the Enterprise like be this hunk of junk that nothing works. Even like when Kirk's trying to record his log and he's got that like cool looking book thing that he's
Yeah.
like recording that like breaks. Like really, like everything doesn't work on the ship.
Yeah.
And the only reason nothing works on the ship is because if things worked on the ship and they had like a functioning crew, this could
Yeah.
never happen.
Yeah.
That they would
Yeah.
never be able to. The only reason they're able to be taken over by these hijacked by these losers
Yeah.
that are completely not capable under normal circumstances for doing this to do this is because the ship doesn't work and they have a skeleton crew and it's just too convenient for me. It just doesn't work. That's the big problem for me. And I don't know, like when Star Trek 4 ends and they're on the Enterprise A and they're warping off, like this movie should have been like an adventure out in space on this new Enterprise. They're kind of off doing their old thing again.
Yeah.
That's what I wish they would have done, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to having this smaller, the ship doesn't work kind of thing. I don't know. I think it's a big misstep. The whole plot, the whole story, I think, is just kind of silly. I've always, and I'm going to have to eat my words, I'm sure, now because of what Discovery is clearly doing with Michael Burnham, the main character.
Mm-hmm.
I never bought, for years, I've always kind of criticized, Sybok is Spock's half brother. That has never been mentioned before. Like, I've always been like, come on. Like,
Yeah.
that just doesn't sit right with me.
Yeah.
I don't believe it. But I guess Discovery is going to play with the same kind of idea somehow, some way. I don't know. They say it's going to make sense. They say it's going to fit in canon. So we'll see how they do it. I hope they come up with a better explanation than they do in this movie for Sybok, where he just says, "Oh, I was indisposed to talk about a personal, matters of personal nature or something." He said, it never came up. Basically, is his reason. And even like I guess the thing about that works less for me than even that, like just the fact that he just never brought it up in the past, is they have this big scene in that observation lounge towards the beginning of the movie, after Spock sees the video and recognizes him. They have this big scene where Spock's talking about him. He's telling Kirk and McCoy that he's an outcast. He embraced emotion, rejects logic, and then went off. And Spock knew him, I guess, as a kid, and just doesn't mention that he's his brother. Like
Yeah.
at least in that scene, you probably should have mentioned it.
Yeah.
When you're going into this dangerous situation with this guy, that there might be a slight conflict of interest going on. Um, so yeah, it's just kind of clumsy, kind of messy from a plot standpoint.
Yeah.
But to kind of double back a little bit to the positive end of things, it's salvaged by these actors, these characters being in so seasoned in these parts. Um, that's kind of what keeps it out of total disaster territory.
hmm Yeah, and I love it has one of the best one-liners, I think.
Which one?
What does God need with a sergeant?
I know. Yeah,
Uh,
a
but
legendary moment.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it's got lines like that in it
Yeah.
that are varying degrees of like cute and really good. Like there are moments about in the movie that work really well.
hmm
And somebody I see the chat talking about the Klingons, and somebody I can't remember who I saw say it, and they're totally right. They call them biker Klingons in this movie. The two main, the Vixis and Claw, I think his name is.
Yeah.
Uh, they're totally just like cogs in the machine. They're just there to be a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Um, and again, that's just the plotting of this movie. The problem with this movie is the plotting is just lazy and convenient. Like everything's kind of there because it needs to be there.
Yeah.
Nothing feels, you know, like there's real purpose to much of anything going on. It's totally um, going to succeed or fail on its uh, character moments, the performances of the actors. Like that's what's going to make this movie work or not work for you, most likely.
hmm
Uh, and yeah, it's anything else kind of stand out to you for
Um,
5?
I don't think so.
Okay, so what about going into the next one, the other side of this coin? Uh, when I mentioned Nemesis, what comes to mind for you? Like, what's your initial thought?
Uh, Tired.
Tired. Yes,
Yeah. Um,
great way to put it.
yeah, very tired. I think that there is just trying to squeeze out as much TNG as possible that they could, you know, try to get as much out of it as possible. I don't know. It's definitely a tough one for me to watch. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I think, like I mentioned with the Final Frontier, with this kind of charm and camp, I don't think Nemesis has much of anything of that. I think it's kind of the opposite of that coin. I think Nemesis is tired. It's very dark. It's not funny
Mm-mm.
in a lot of ways. It's very heavy. It tries
Yeah.
to be heavy.
Mhm.
Um, it's it tries to. I think they went into that movie obviously knowing that it was going to be the end for this crew. It was going to basically act as a finale for TNG.
Mhm.
So I think they tried to instill it with a lot of weight and heft dramatically, and I don't know that it's really consistent with what it doesn't feel TNG to me. It feels oftentimes like it's kind of generic sci-fi.
Mhm.
Um, that's kind of the air I get from it.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know. It's a tough one for me. It's like I said, 5 is the one is a movie that I don't really struggle with. Like when I get to it, I'm not like, oh man. Nemesis is not one that I like. It's probably the one of the bunch that I'm like, man, I really just I don't know. Like it's not one that I totally enjoy pulling off the shelf
Yeah.
to pop in. Um, I don't know. It does have moments. I think the battle
Yeah.
scene at the end is cool.
Mhm.
I think they do some big stuff with that. I like that they built the bridge on a gimbal. I think that works. I think it adds some urgency to the battle scene. When the
Mhm.
ship's shaking, that you can tell that they are shaking, like the
Mhm.
ship is shaking, the set. Um, it's a simple little thing, but I think it's kind of cool. I think it's unique for that movie. Um, I I guess a positive thing for Nemesis for me is I do kind of like the message of it. I like what it's trying to say. Kind of similar to 5. I think it's got a Trek message at its kind of core. I like this idea of exploring, somebody that comes from the same DNA as Picard, this like mythic figure if you're a Star Trek fan, like the perfect man. Picard, the same DNA can create. You're a product of your environment. You're a product of your upbringing. You're a product of.
Mm-hmm.
It's a nature versus nurture kind of message, and I kind of like that. I like what it's trying to say more than the way it says it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not a huge fan of the Shinzon concept. I think that was. I don't know that was the greatest idea to try to, cast someone. And Tom Hardy's a good actor now. He's kind of a movie star now.
Yeah.
He's a legitimate good actor. But to try to cast somebody to play like an alternate version of Picard, I think is a tall order.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that he totally pulls that off. I don't know that it really works. That we're looking at, an alternate version of Picard when you're watching that.
Mm-hmm.
At least for me, I never totally buy it. But I do, like I said, I like the message that it's trying to get at. What about you? Like, what?
Yeah, so some of the Rob in chat kind of explains one thing that I like. I like the cameo from Janeway.
Me too.
um, and like you said, I do like the visuals, especially the battle scenes, and some of the props are kind of cool, and similar to 5, like you said, there's things that you can find
Yep.
that definitely work. Like I like um, you know Riker and Picard's relationship and their kind of deal. Like that's just usual TNG though, so
Mm-hmm.
it's not like nothing new, but it's definitely I like it. Like you said, the plot definitely is. They tried to, but I don't think it came across as well as they were hoping. But yeah.
Do you like the wedding? Like, do you like that they did that?
I mean, me, the cheesy, heartless romantic, definitely
Mm-hmm.
likes to see a Star Trek wedding and
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
Worf hungover, and it's just it's good that
I actually,
okay, that moment.
yeah, yeah, me too. I actually
Yeah,
kind of wish it was longer. I wish that they would have let that scene breathe a little bit, and
yeah, me too.
um, I would have liked to have seen, especially in a movie like this where it's the end. This is I granted that this is speaking as a fan and not as like a casual moviegoer, but I would totally be down for like a Deer Hunter style. Like Deer Hunter starts with this big long wedding scene that seems to go on forever. Like
Hmm.
I would love to see Nemesis do that. Like uh, spend time with these characters. Go around the room and see the characters interacting with each other because it's the last time you're going to see them.
Hmm.
I like that Guinan's in it. I like that Wesley's in it. I think that's kind of cool. You don't really get to see them much, and that's kind of the lame part of it. That
Yeah.
they're doing it, but they're not really doing much with it.
Hmm.
Um, and I get that that's for the casual fan. Somebody stumbling in who's not really invested in these characters, um, maybe doesn't need a big extended scene in that kind of setting. Um, I don't know. I like that they went there. I like that they did it. I like that they kind of culminated that relationship because it was such kind of a through line in TNG. And it actually, in the previous movie, in Insurrection, they kind of start that up again while they're in the Briar Patch. You know, Riker and Troy kind of like hook back up, and I kind of like that. This kind of implies that they stayed together. Like
Hmm.
they kind of formalized their thing. Maybe after that movie and in the time in between that led up to this. I like that. I think that's kind of neat that they did that. And um, yeah, for instance, to in it, there's a good movie in there somewhere. I think
Yeah.
with a lot of what they're doing.
Hmm.
Um, it's I've said it before, and I believe it, and I know a lot of people say it. I think it falls victim to a director who not interested in Star Trek. Like I've seen actors, LeVar Burton, Marina Sirtis talk about like he literally had no idea like what Star Trek was while he was
Yeah.
directing. He thought Geordi was an alien because of his eyes, and LeVar Burton tried to explain to him like on a daily basis. No, like I'm not an alien. I'm a human. Uh, and so he was directing from that place. And I think when you have a director who just kind of doesn't respect what Trek is and have an understanding, you don't have to be a fan to do it. You don't have to live and breathe it to direct a good Star Trek movie. I think Nicholas Meyer kind of proved that. He wasn't like a diehard fan and kind of approached it from a different angle.
Yeah.
And he totally was successful. But I think he respected it. I think he knew was, what made it successful to capitalize on it. And I don't think this guy did. Stuart Baird. I think he kind of missed the mark on that.
And like I looked him up on IMDb and was like, all right, is this guy as bad as everybody say he is? He's only directed 3 films.
Yeah.
He's an editor.
He's an editor.
What he does is he's an editor. He's not a director. And
Exactly.
I don't know what they were thinking doing that. It's just some of those decisions I'm like, what? Okay, whatever, I guess.
And I think it's totally, if you can, I'm certainly not an expert. I wasn't there, but I think from my perspective, if you can pinpoint something that kind of doomed that movie, it was probably that choice, hiring, that particular person. I think really set it up to not succeed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's definitely frustrating because, like, I mean, there were so many great directors, even just on the cast.
Yeah.
That could have stepped up and done it, but I feel like maybe, I don't know, maybe the cast was tired and they were just,
Well, that's what you said the perfect word at the beginning of, the discussion on this movie is, I think tired is the best way to describe it. I just, you just feel it. You just feel like this age and lack of energy, lack of momentum. They're kind of, it's taken everything they have just to do it,
Yeah.
There's not much sense of fun. There's not much sense of levity, which is in 5. Like, that's the difference to me. 5 has that fun air to it. This does not. So, and who knows why that is? Is it a product of where the actor's miserable working with a director that just totally didn't get it and that shows up on screen like that? Maybe. I don't know. Or was it a conscious choice to like try to fill this movie with this like air of importance and drama that just turns up as this joyless I don't know if it was a conscious choice or if it was something that was just a byproduct of it not being a good production. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think am I making any sense?
Yeah, you are. I don't know. I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Does the what do you think of the Argo scene? Does that work for you? The Jeep on the desert planet.
I don't know. It seems like, I don't know. It's in the middle of the road. It's like I don't know. To me, it fits the movie. It's like I don't think it. It's definitely like when I think of it, I'm like, oh yeah, I love that scene. It's like, it's okay. What about you?
Not a huge fan of it. One thing I'll give it is that it's the one point in the movie where they actually do seem to be trying to have like some sense of fun.
Yeah.
Some sense of like, oh, we're having a good time doing this. So I kind of appreciate it for that reason. But it is, to me, it's kind of a an action scene. Just
actiony scene to just cause.
Yep. Yeah. It's pretty clearly them trying to inject some action into the first half of that movie, because the first half of that movie is very kind of talky and there's a lot of exposition, there's not a lot going on. That's action oriented in the first half of that movie, and to me that's clear. It's clearly just a throw in.
Yeah.
And I'd rather have the extended stuff at the wedding and scratch that out.
Just cut that out.
Yeah, if they did that, I mean, and I get it, they need that. They need some of that. That's what I guess brings them to they go there because they're picking up signals of the possibility of another android, and it's planted there to get the Enterprise near the neutral zone, so it gets brought to Romulus. Yeah, I get it. I get plot reason to have it there.
Yeah.
but it's at the end of the day, it's just an unnecessary kind
Yeah.
of diversion to have some action.
I don't know. You think in the future they would have something different than like an ATV or buggy
An
thing?
ATV,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's the thing. Like visually, it always kind of like threw me for a loop. It's just
Yeah.
it doesn't feel Trek to me. That's where like stuff like that is what makes it
Yeah.
feel like some maybe like a generic sci-fi movie, more than it feels like okay, I'm watching a Star Trek movie now.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that comes from again, maybe the guy directing it not really knowing, not really caring to know,
Yeah.
what makes Trek what it is. Um, I think what else? I guess a really important thing to talk about, and I assume everyone who's in here now has seen the movie, and it's not a spoiler. But spoiler alert: if you're watching this on replay and you haven't seen the movie, I know there are people out there who I know who haven't watched everything yet.
Hmm.
Um, so spoiler alert: stop if you care. um, killing Data the way that they do. What do you think? Does it
Um,
work?
and we can definitely, if you guys want, definitely go into a deeper episode about just death and Trek in general.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely something
it
worth.
it feels unnecessary. I think I get why it happens. Like they trying to make it dramatic, but I there's other ways to make it feel dramatic without killing off probably one of a more beloved character for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think I don't know. It this movie falls prey to I think trying to capture some of kind of like Into Darkness does. I think it's trying to recapture some Wrath of Khan notes.
Yeah.
I think there are some similarities there, and I think I don't know. I don't think it's really well earned. I think the whole way that it happens is kind of I don't know. It doesn't feel organic and natural the way that
Wrath of Khan does.
Spock's
Yeah.
feels. Right. It feels like they're doing it because they have to,
Hmm.
or because they feel like they have to. Spiner wanted it to happen. John, correct. Like,
Yeah.
that's definitely the case, and that's how it feels. It feels like the actor wanted it to happen, so that's why we're doing this. Um, where the Wrath of Khan does not feel that way. It feels like a natural um, thing that's been built up to. It's thematically in line with what the movie's trying to say.
Hmm.
It fits. This does not necessarily feel that way. Um, I kind of like the scene that comes after that when they're all standing in a circle having a glass of wine, commiserating uh, after he's gone.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a nice moment where you see them all together. This movie's kind of absent that. There's not a lot of that going on for being a final, look at these people.
Hmm.
So I do appreciate that. Riker trying to remember what song, Data was whistling and Encounter at Farpoint's kind of cute. I
Yeah.
like that they call back to that. That's nice. I wish
Hmm.
there was more of that kind of stuff going on. Not a ton. You don't need to do a lot of it. It
Yeah.
doesn't need to be fan wanky, fan service, but
Hmm.
um, when you're wrapping up and it's the end, it's kind of nice to throw something in there, and I'm glad they did.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. It's I don't. It doesn't have the dramatic impact for me that Spock or some other characters even um, had, and I think it's a shame. It's a missed opportunity, and I think it's kind of deep. It kind of like Into Darkness did, which is a whole other conversation. And unlike Wrath of Khan did, at least within its own movie, Search for Spock correctively, you know, corrects the death of Spock. I guess changes it. But Into Darkness in this movie, throw in something at the very end to kind of give hope, kind of give a solve to it. With
Yeah.
before starting to remember, I guess the data dump that they tried at the beginning of the movie is starting to work. So it leaves you with this idea that okay, like all Data's memory is going to end up in B4, and he's not really
Hmm.
dead.
Yeah.
So not only is it kind of like not necessarily earned, it's not a particularly well executed major character death, but 10 minutes later it's kind of established, oh, maybe he's not really dead. Um, so I don't know. I think that's kind of a misstep. I think the whole B4 thing is kind of a misstep, to be honest, too. I get what they're trying to do. It's a mirror for, it's not just Picard who's dealing with this idea of nature versus nurture. Something coming from you,
Hmm.
uh, literally from you, from your DNA, can be the complete opposite of you in a different world,
Mm-hmm.
different upbringing, different surroundings, different environment.
Yeah.
The problem with the Data B4 storyline for me is we've already done that with lore in the show.
Yeah.
Like we've already kind of explored that territory.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. It feels like kind of a lazy way to keep Data involved in the storyline, to give him a big
Something to
role.
do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they really tried in a lot of these movies to keep Data kind of as like the one that's like a notch below Picard. Like he's the secondary kind of
Mm-hmm.
lead in a lot of these movies. And yeah, I think that's the way they did it with this one, and I don't really think it works
Mm-hmm.
because it feels familiar to people like us who know the show. It doesn't feel new and different. We already kind of know the answer to what they're asking.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so Rob's posing the ultimate question,
Yes,
which is
that's a
better.
question.
Um, do we want to answer that? Like, what do you think?
It's such a tough question because um I don't know. You could also, I mean, you could do which is better, just as
Mm-hmm.
from a movie standpoint, but which do you enjoy? Because I feel like you could go either way. Because sometimes like you might enjoy something that's not better, I guess. So I don't
Yeah.
know. It's
Mm-hmm.
definitely tough. Um, what do you think? Which is better for you?
I think you hit the nail on the head there. With it, it's kind of, I think the better movie, just from like a production side. Like, if you're just judging it on its merits, I think Nemesis is probably the more accomplished movie. I think it's probably a better production. Um, but I prefer the Final Frontier. I think it works better for me, because of the charm, like we talked about, the silliness, the camp. It's an easier watch for me. Um, it doesn't have the, I don't know. Nemesis doesn't have the plot, kind of the ridiculous conveniences in the plot to just get from point A to point B.
Yeah.
Nemesis is more an issue of execution to me. Like I said, the direction of it,
Mm-hmm.
some of the choices they make within the story, I think kind of kill it. I think Five's story is kind of not working from the ground level. Like, it just
Yeah.
doesn't. It never should work because it's just kind of it's ill-conceived, I guess. Where Nemesis, I think, is more of a product of bad execution. Um, I think the Final Frontier is an easier watch. I think that's the one that I can definitely say with certainty that I have an easier time going back to that than I do Nemesis.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm really answering the question, like which one I like better, it's Final Frontier. I prefer it. Um, but I think if you showed I guess if you showed these two movies to two non-fans who are kind of looking at them as science fiction movies,
Yeah, their own
not
thing. Yeah.
totally invested in the history of it, and yeah, all the bells and whistles that you and I get off on.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be interested to hear like what they would say.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't be surprised if if the general person, the general movie going person, has an easier time with Nemesis than they do Final Frontier,
Mm-hmm.
because Nemesis is a little bit of a cleaner production. It's newer, and that's not. I'm not saying older stuff isn't as good. Believe me, TOS is my favorite series. I'm just saying, like, the general movie going fan might have an easier time identifying with Nemesis as like an action science fiction movie
Mm-hmm.
than the Final Frontier, which is kind of, I think, more aimed at. And I guess maybe this is another thing to think about. I think the Final Frontier is more aimed at the fans, trying to appeal to that element of the people who are going to the movie.
Yeah.
And Nemesis is probably trying to aim more at the general
Yeah, widespread
public.
population instead
Yeah,
of just strictly the fans.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with you. You hit the nail on the head. I think Nemesis is definitely the better movie, but for me personally, I like the Final Frontier. It just has more charm
Mm-hmm.
than Nemesis. Um, yeah.
Yep. And
It,
honestly,
go ahead.
mm-hmm. Yeah. No, you first.
Oh no, just I was just gonna talk about the chat. Definitely
Mm-hmm.
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, neither one of these movies is like, because I did, when I did my first rewatch on Twitter, I ranked everything from top to bottom, 1 to 707 or whatever, and neither one of these movies is like in the bottom 100 for me. They're more both towards kind of the middle of the pack, and I think the reason for that is, like I mentioned, in both of these movies, I kind of like the message of both of them. I like what both of these movies are trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
I think they both have a message that kind of fits in the Trek, as Star Trek. I think they have Star Trek messages to them. And I think that kind of keeps them from being, like I said, total disasters. Nemesis, I can make a case, should be way lower on my list because I think it does more damage because it's the end. It's not only the finale for TNG, it's kind of the finale for 24th century, that entire era of Trek. TNG, DS9, Voyager. It's the end of that. After that, it's on the timeline standpoint. It's which is, it goes back. It's totally disconnected from a story point of view. It's totally in another place. So if you watch it in the timeline, if you watch it in the order like I do, and I have Enterprise at the beginning, it goes from Nemesis into 2009. It goes into the Kelvin timeline. So it's kind of the end of prime timeline Trek from a timeline standpoint. It's the end of that period. And when I think of it that way, just being the finale for TNG and kind of failing is bad enough, but to be the wrap up for that entire era is worse. Considerably worse.
Mm-hmm.
But you're gonna reference the chat.
John Jones says we haven't mentioned the water pool table. That's in Final Frontier. There's a lot of things in that scene, and definitely on Nimbus. It's like, what? You're just like, what the heck? Water pool table? Okay, I mean, sure. And some other, I don't know, things in there. You're like, okay.
Cat ladies.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's some bizarre design choices in that movie, especially on Nimbus. Totally agreed. Really, really weird.
As Uhura dancing on, it's like,
oh man,
yeah.
I still stand by. I said this last night. I think that might be. That's up there as like kind of like the worst moments. It just totally is awful for me.
Yeah.
And I don't like Hayden. I don't like just giving completely overwhelmingly negative on anything Trek. But that is a abject failure for me. I don't like it. That scene is gratuitous and over the top and ridiculous and totally a misstep in a way that I don't think Trek often missteps. Yes, Rob, there is 3 of something in that scene that gets your attention. There's no doubt. Dan and I both noticed. That, like I said, that scene is filled with unusual choices. I get what they were going for. They were going for totally alien, totally weird. But yeah, I don't know if it totally holds up nowadays. So I think we're both settled on. I think we're both on the same page with Nemesis being kind of the better production, better movie as a whole. But Final Frontier maybe having more charm for people like us. Is that fair to say? You think we're both? That's where we both stand completely.
I think I would agree with that. I kind of looked it up because I'm kind of an IMDb nerd. Nemesis has a 6.4 surprisingly, and Final Frontier is like a 5.4. So it's just interesting to see the kind of difference there.
Yeah, and I was going to mention this at the beginning, but I neglected. I put a poll up on Twitter a few days ago, and 88 people voted on which is the better movie, Final Frontier or Nemesis. 58% voted for Nemesis, 42% voted for the Final Frontier. So, and I did phrase it as which is the better movie, not which do you like better, which do you prefer. I don't know how people answer. People have different schools of thought on that. Some people view it as the same. Some people view that as very different. There's a big distinction there between better and favorite. And I'm kind of in that camp too. I think there's a difference there. But that poll, it's not a huge sample size in the grand scheme of things, but from my Twitter feed, it's a fairly big sample, 88 people, said on about a 60-40 split that Nemesis was the better movie.
Mm-hmm.
So just interesting stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's a definitive answer. And honestly, the other side to this that we didn't really delve into, and to be honest, I know I didn't really want to go here, but if I asked on Twitter right now, which is the worst of the Star Trek movies, I do think a lot of the responses would be one of these two movies, but I think the other movie that would kind of run kind of in line with these two is probably Into Darkness. I think that's a whole nother discussion. It's a little more raw. It's a little more new. So I think it's a different kind of conversation. But I think that's the other movie that the large, population of fans probably would maybe lump in this kind of conversation as something that warrants discussion. Into Darkness. But I think we've talked about ad nauseum just between us and on the show as well that Into Darkness is a thing that warrants larger discussion on our part. Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, thanks, Rob.
Episode 17. It feels like yesterday.
Yeah.
Kind of fun by. It's kind of
does.
hard to believe that we've been doing this for like 17, 18 weeks. Crazy. And we'll see on episode 20. We don't get that far ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
Right now. So we'll see.
Yeah.
It's not a bad idea. Ask us anything episode, Rob. Anything's possible. We're open to suggestions.
Yeah.
John, I'm going to ask you, got to be no motion picture. Motion picture as far as what?
Probably
you think
bottom,
that's the other
bottom of the list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's often cited too. That's the thing. I mean, we kind of whittled it down to the two that I think are most commonly in that kind of conversation, but there are others that people feel strongly about. Like I said, Into Darkness, Insurrection, I think is lamented by many, and motion picture for sure is like its own. The motion picture is almost like a total anomaly. It's like a totally own thing. It's different than everything else. It's got a totally unique feel to it that I think kind of separates it from the rest of the movies. It's a totally different experience, I think. Yeah. Any closing? Anything you want to add?
I'll just add that Bill and I aren't out to kind of bash anything. We love
Oh, yeah.
we love it all. Like we said, we can find things even in things we like in the bottom end of the spectrum of the movies. So it's not like we're trying to bash any of these movies. We just picked these because these were the two movies, like Bill said, that have always kind of gone back and forth. So we're not out to bash it. We still love each of these movies. So just know that. And moving forward on to Discovery too, just know that.
Yes. Yeah. We try really hard, and actually we really don't even have to try because it's how we both really feel. That we have a very positive. We look at Star Trek through rose-colored glasses. It's definitely a positive vibe coming from our show, and it's going to continue to be because we love it all. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this, look at these two movies, is to shed some light on the things that work on these movies. Like there are things that I do respond to and I do kind of like, and I think we got into maybe a few more of those things in the Final Frontier, the Nemesis, which I think explains why our decision on which one we like better is that decision. But I wanted to take the time to look at things that are on the bottom of lists often and shed some light on what what works about it and why it's still good. And Adam's saying, and I have said that before, but Bad Trek is better than, for me, most run-of-the-mill stuff. I'm going to enjoy it more than the run-of-the-mill TV show or the run-of-the-mill movie. It's on another level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. John Jones, real quick, I do have to ask. well, I don't not ask, but you are correct. I haven't read the entire thing, but the Michael Piller book about the writing of insurrection that you reference, from what I've seen, is really cool. Um, and I need to actually just read the whole thing. I don't think you can. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you can buy it. I don't think it's out as like a published book, but you can get it online. Correct? Um, I think that's how I saw it before. But yeah, really, really cool. Thanks for mentioning that. Everybody should check it out. Rob, I have not been playing STO. As Dan is aware, I've had computer
Computer
issues.
issues.
Yeah, I may have a bad video card on my gaming computer, so I have things I need to do before I can really delve in. So, and believe me, I want to. I've tried numerous times, as Dan can attest. I've
Mm-hmm.
sent him the screenshots to prove it.
Yeah.
It's it's a struggle, but
Yeah. Yeah. But Rob, there will be actually an after party of this Trek Live episode. I will be streaming today, this morning. I'm gonna take a little break, obviously, get some food and stuff, but I'll come back and kind of intro into the new series, I guess. So
cool. Yeah, that's
yeah,
really cool. I'm excited to see it. I'm going to be
yeah.
watching. Um,
So
yeah,
his wife published it last year.
cool. Yeah, I should pick it up
Yeah.
because it's from what I've seen, it's really really interesting stuff. How that movie was conceived and different directions they tried to go in and ended up kind of being forced to maybe play it a little safe. Um, yeah. Any last thoughts from the gallery, peanut gallery in the chat, or Dan? You got anything you want to throw in before we?
I think we should maybe outro this with a little rotary boat.
I don't know. I don't know if anybody wants to hear that.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm just
but
kidding.
yeah, that's funny though. You, I'm going to bring this up. You went camping last weekend,
Yes. Yeah.
and
I
correct me if
thought
I'm wrong.
of the Final Frontier.
I bet you did.
Yeah.
And true or false, you sang "Row, Row, Row Your Boat" while you were camping last weekend.
We did.
There you go.
Because we kind of fashioned a raft and we sang Rotary Boat on it. It was fun, but I thought of the Final Frontier, so
No doubt. No doubt. It's impossible to think of that song without
without
thinking
yeah
Final Frontier now. Once you see it and you're a Star Trek fan, that
yeah
song is totally on a different like it's got a special place now forever.
yeah
Row Your Boat. Life is not a dream. Yeah. Um, yeah. So, anything else? Any last before we take off? Final. I don't know.
I don't think so. The discussion does not have to stop with this stream podcast. Definitely come over to Twitter, hit up Bill and I. We're definitely on there. Next week, still haven't decided what we're gonna talk about. Definitely have a few ideas, but definitely stay tuned. Probably gonna be around the same time as this.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Keep an eye on Twitter. We'll announce ahead of time like we usually do. Try to get some conversation going ahead of time. Get people's ideas before we come on here and air our thoughts on whatever we decide on. So keep an eye, and like I said, like Dan said, keep talking to us, through the week. This does not have to stop at the end of the stream by any means. I'm always down to talk. Talk Trek.
And definitely stop back by if you want to watch some Star Trek Online content. I mean, we don't have to talk about Star Trek Online. I'll still play, but we can talk about anything.
Yep.
Life, Star Trek, whatever you guys are feeling. So definitely stop by and check that out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks everyone. Thanks John for the coming in. We'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, seriously, John. Thank you. Welcome to the family.
Yeah. Thanks guys. See you next week.
See ya.